They're the same as last year, so nothing's changed there. But you can grab yourself a copy if you'd like. And I think we'll get right into it. We just have. Yeah, I think Representative Hauser's on WebEx and Representative Bloom should be as well. So we'll get started here with we have 3 informational briefings today, and we'll start with the Adjutant General's Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon and talk about the great things the Adjutant General's Department is doing for the state of Kansas and our great country. The department's responsible for the operations of the Kansas Army and Air National Guard, the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, and the Kansas Office of Homeland Security. So I know that all of you have the testimony provided by our legislative liaison in front of you. And so instead of reading the entirety of it, I'll briefly flow through it and try and maximize time spent with you this afternoon. The diverse nature of the agency makes it unique as we receive authorities and funding from both state and federal levels. And so to be able to discuss with you today of what the agency does for the state of Kansas is of vital importance. Our mission is to protect life and property through planning, coordination, and synchronization of state and federal resources to provide a ready military, emergency management, and homeland security capability for the state and nation. Our Kansas National Guard is comprised of the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard. In totality, that is over 7,200 airmen, soldiers, and civilians that comprise the team. Of that number, about 20%, just north of 20%, is in a full-time capacity. Our traditional serving members are what would be your police officers, teachers, nurses, librarians. And so they are truly the community who, on a part-time basis, commit their service to serving in the military with the state of Kansas and the National Guard. The Kansas National Guard participates in a spectrum of operations from domestic operations to full-scale combat operations in deployed austere environments. And why is that important is because my job primarily for the federal component is to fight and win the nation's wars. And so that is for our Kansas Army and Air National Guard. The beauty of being a National Guard is that we get the dual status use of our equipment. And so aside from having equipment from delivering combat capability abroad, with the Kansas National Guard in Title 32 capacity, we can use that same equipment in a dual status capability to take care of any domestic operations response we have across the state or elsewhere in the nation. Activation of our servicemen is somewhat tricky, and that there is actually 3 different categories of service that can be held by our guardsmen. The most important one, I think, for this community to hear about is state active duty. So state active duty is the means by which we activate our guardsmen, and they're literally become state employees. And so that's the most popular method that we use our guardsmen when it comes to tackling domestic operations in the state. And so that's where we put out a call for volunteerism, and members of the Air National Guard and Army National Guard will volunteer for whatever operations we're conducting. Let's take, if we have to do a search and rescue or whatever the case may be, and we're going to activate 60 guardsmen, we'll put out the call for support on that. And then whoever militarily signs up for that effort will become state employees. And so that is paid for by the state, and that is the status that they're in. Militarily, as leader, status is extremely important, for it determines benefits, it determines chains of command. And so that's why I want to kind of talk about those today. The second most popular is the one that I'm in today, and that is Title 32. So Title 32 is a federal status that is where my chain of command flows through the governor as my commander-in-chief, and then it is paid for federally. So that's the distinct difference between Title 10 and Title 32, is that in a Title 32 capacity, that chain of command flows from the governor to me down to the troops. Title 10 is the true federal capacity. So that is where the Commander-in-Chief is the President of the United States, and through the Secretary of Defense and the service secretaries, and that authority falls down to me. And that's where we take care of fighting and winning the nation's wars. So that is a federal status, also paid for in a federal capacity. So let me bring some examples of what our Guardsmen have done in recent history and for this state and nation. In 2022, our active component, we tackled wildfire response in Reno County. So we're blessed in the state of Kansas to have the 108th Aviation Battalion with UH-60 Blackhawks. Extremely important asset when it comes to tackling wildfires in the state. And if we need to do it outside the state, we can do that as well. When I talk about domestic operations, though, in front of you, I don't want to just limit it to the state, as our team has gone elsewhere. Just a few years back, we sent a significant number of Guardsmen down to Louisiana to help with some hurricane relief efforts down there. And so through emergency management assistant compacts that we have with other states, we may be called upon to go assist with whatever problems that other states may be having. And so that really is an opportunity for us to assist with them as well. The first thing I talked about when it came to military was that our job is to go fight and win the nation's wars. So I'll tell you that just this Sunday, I had the pleasure to go watch just under 600 of our finest depart from Stormont Vale as they raise their hands and are in the process of moving forward to the Central Command area of responsibility to go do exactly that. And that is to go assist in Operation Spartan Shield and make sure that things are being taken care of down there. It was great to see the support that came from the community on Sunday, as we had Senator Moran speak. We had Senator Marshall provide a video. We had several members of this state legislature who were present. And so I thank everybody who showed up that day to see our incredibly humble soldiers get moving. Recently, in that same vein, we've seen the return of the 2nd and the 130th Artillery Battalion. And so they spent a year downrange doing the same thing with an artillery look on supporting Operation Spartan Shield. We currently have members that are preparing for future deployments. One of the things that I want to make this committee aware of for the Kansas Army National Guard is that from today, for about the next 5 years, consider about 20% of my Army force to be gone. That's a rather significant data point. And that not only is that data where the soldiers will be training and executing for a combat operation overseas, but what it means is I'll have less than the desired amount of forces here should something occur in Kansas. I need to use them for domestic operations capability. And so I just want everybody to be aware that that is a significant portion of the force that will be gone for the next several years as they deploy. From the Air National Guard perspective, we have 2 wings. We have the 190th Air Refueling Wing here in Topeka, Kansas, and we have the 184th Wing in Wichita, Kansas. So the 190th Air Refueling Wing, they conduct operations across the globe with air refueling, flying the KC-135 Stratotanker. They conduct operations both in the Central Command area responsibility as well as in the Indo-PACOM, so Indo-Pacific region for combat operations out there. The 184th Wing out of Wichita, Kansas, McConnell Air Force Base specifically, they really have 3 distinct portfolios. The first of which is command and control. And so if you can think of really like an air traffic control scenario on the civilian sector, but instead of keeping airplanes apart, their job is really to get airplanes to what we call the merge. So making sure that our good aircraft are protected and that they can escape if fast flying aircraft from the enemy close in, or if we need to get our good combat aircraft to engage with the enemy, they can make sure that those merges occur. Another portfolio is a cyber portfolio where we have the 184th Cyber Operations Group, who is every day tackling cyber intrusions and making sure that our Department of Defense network and infrastructure is secured. And then the last one is we have a relatively robust intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance portfolio out of that wing as well. From the Army side, we have 5 major subordinate commands. So the first of which is the 69th Troop Command, and that's really kind of it's like they're in charge of. They have medical capability there. They have military police capability there. They have a 35th Infantry Division band. So there's a relatively large number of soldiers that work under the guidance of Colonel Erica Christie. Our largest major subordinate command is the 635th Regional Support Group. And under them, we have some combat capability with, we have the Black Hawk assets, we have our M1 Abram tanks, we have infantry as well associated with that. Our third one is the 130th Field Artillery Brigade. And so under them, we have battalions that specialize in the Paladin weapon system, which is it's a howitzer basically. And then we also have the HIMARS weapon system. And you may have read about the HIMARS as it's getting some notoriety for what's being conducted in operations in Ukraine right now. And then we also have the 35th Infantry Division. And that's a unique organization in that although it's headquartered here in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, we share soldiers for that organization across 7 different states. And so that really is a unique opportunity for Kansas to show some leadership at a division level of organization. So now I'll switch gears to the Kansas Division of Emergency Management. And so that organization is comprised of roughly 50 individuals. It is headed up with my deputy director, Miss Angie Morgan, as she leads that team to make sure that we are never late to need when it comes to taking care of citizens of Kansas who are having a bad day. And so right now, obviously, we have the team working through some emergencies going on across the state. And so I'm very proud of their efforts to make sure that they are very professional and dealing with 105 county emergency managers as they are up channeling their resource requests, and we take care of those. The third hat I want to talk about is my hat as the Director of Homeland Security, and specifically as Homeland Security Advisor to the Governor. So through that, the office that really comes where the rubber meets the road is our Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center. Maybe you've heard about that center or not, but it is the capability to discuss top secret information. And so the beauty of that Intelligence Fusion Center is where partners can come in, and we make sure basically that we are taking a long look at preventing a terrorist event in Kansas, and collaborating with law enforcement, with business, making sure that we're keeping an eye out for what occurs in Kansas and across the globe as well. So that is specifically what we do in the Kansas Homeland Security Office. In the interest of time, I will conclude my remarks with that. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss what the Adjutant General's Department does, and I stand ready for your questions.
Appreciate your testimony today. Any questions? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Just looking over your testimony, you made the comment during the testimony you're about 20% of Army forces will be deployed over the next 5 years, right? Okay. But when I look at the numbers, you said you're authorized for about roughly 7,200 guardsmen. Currently, there's 6,655. That tells me you're already short 545, or about 7.5%. Is that a concern, or what are we doing to maybe close that gap up, or is it even a concern to worry about?
Sir, it is 100% a concern. And so recruiting and retention is one of my top priorities. And there's multiple reasons there. But if you don't have a full team to field to go forward, then you're starting off with less than a full deck of cards. You're probably aware that across the entire nation, we are struggling lately with some recruiting and numbers across the Department of Defense. And so whether you're talking active duty, guard, or reserve component, it's all the same. And so, sir, to your point, we are absolutely tackling recruiting with a full head of steam, as we want to make sure that we have all of our manning full.
So question number 2 to you, is there something we need to be doing to help you?
Sir, I think just talking about it in your spheres of influence. And I think that as our recruiters go out and about to educate communities and schools and whoever we can to ensure that we get a thriving group of individuals with a passion for service, who want to continue to serve. I think that we'll take help any way we can, but I think talking about it in spheres of influence would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General, on this rotation, you said for the next 5 years, is that normal?
Yes, sir. It is, and so it's broken down by the operational unit itself, and so it's a cycle of deployment with then guaranteed rest, and so that cycle just goes, and so it's just it's the way it is. But I want to make sure that it is a reality that everybody understands, because these men and women are doing their nation's bidding, and as such, we're going to have obviously an impact here in the state if we plan accordingly. And for example, if our helicopter detachment were to go do something away from the state, we make sure that our team coordinates with neighboring states to ensure that if there's a gap in some capability, we account for that with the partnerships that we might have external to Kansas.
Okay, and how long is the deployment for? It's not for 5 years, right?
Oh, no, sir. So a deployment for a unit, standard Army deployment is probably about 9 months, boots on the ground. There's a few months of preparation on the front end of that, and then typically about 2 weeks to 3 weeks on the back end of that. So look for Army unit, it's about a 1 year full-time order, with it about 9 months overseas. On the Air Force side, the standard deployment is 6 months overseas. 2 months overseas.
Okay, so they are going overseas then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are they going to like Iraq or?
Sir, we typically don't specify where. We specify by area of responsibility. And so the folks who just left on Sunday are going to the Central Command area of responsibility.
I had one more question. I gotta find it first. Oh, for the Fusion Center.
Yes, sir.
If I remember, was it last year that you guys asked for 4 and we recommended 2? Is this the additional 2 that was asked for?
So this year, as part of the supplemental, we asked for 2 full-time equivalents, and the government's budget, and those were approved. And those are extremely vital to the success of that organization. That is my top priority for the agency budget.
Okay, but the 2 you're asking for, that's the other 2 that wasn't approved last year? Now, I'm going on memory, so it may not be correct.
So I'm not sure, but we can get that data and get back to you to make sure I get the correct data.
Your asks for different things, is that in the governor's budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Representative Ellis. Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Next up, we'll have our informational briefing on the Sentencing Commission.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Scott Schultz. I'm the Executive Director of the Sentencing Commission. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, on behalf of the 17-member commission, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Sentencing Commission today. Before I start my remarks, I just wanted to kind of go back over some ground. Really appreciate the chair spending time back in August to come and listen to the agencies, get a little bit better handle on what they were doing. This is my 13th session, and that had not been done before. Very much appreciate that, and I'm sure other agencies do as well. I'd kind of like to just kind of give a nutshell version of what the Sentencing Commission does. We operate, obviously, we're going from military to criminal justice now, so change gears. The purpose of our agency is to provide accurate, objective information to policy makers and stakeholders in the criminal justice system. What does that mean? That means that I try and keep Shirley Morrow busy. And before that, Merle Riedel. No, we our entire existence is based upon providing value in the criminal justice system by providing data. And many of you have been around for quite some time and know the Sentencing Commission's mission is to be able to collect all of that criminal justice data. We're able to actually maintain and collect our own data from felony sentencing journal entries that come in throughout the state. But we also then have KDOC data that we have access to. We also have KBI arrest data going clear back to 1912. So, so we are able to actually utilize that data and be able to bring many of the things that I'm going to talk about to you. Thankfully, unlike the Adjutant General, we essentially have two programs. I have a small office that is 15 strong. We have operations, and then we have the Senate Bill 123 Substance Abuse Treatment Program. And that has been, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the sentencing guidelines. And that is something that the commission was actually originated to develop and now maintain. And I kind of call us the gatekeepers of the guidelines. So part of that, we have a research department that actually does criminal justice research. They're the ones that are actually developing the databases that from all the information that's coming in. Every single felony sentence that actually occurs in the state, there is data that we actually pick up and are able to place in the database. That database then is actually used for a myriad of other things. One in particular is for legislative purposes. For those of you who are or have served in House Corrections or House Judiciary, we actually do prison bed space impact statements. And so any criminal justice bill of any sort will actually have a bed space impact from the Sentencing Commission. These are important that, and I tell people, they're not definitive by any means, but at the same time, it gives you more information to be able to make hopefully a better decision with that particular bill. And then so if it gets amended, which I know bills never do, but if it does get amended, we will also go ahead and go back and see whether or not the change of language actually significantly impacts that impact. So as part of the statistical analysis, we do that for this type of time of the year. The bed space impact statements are done. I think we did about 190 last year for the legislature. One of the other specific things that we do because of the data that we have, we utilize a computer model to do prison population projections for the Department of Corrections, which is then made public so that the governor's office and others can actually see what essentially a 10-year projection of what we believe or estimate is going to be the prison population. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But as far as being able to do that, we can actually, the model we use also allows us to actually get down even farther as far as digging down into the custody classification levels of the prisons to be able to estimate how many of those folks are going to be minimum, how many are going to be maximum, how many are going to be special. And we work with the Department of Corrections after that prison population projection comes out to actually do that on an annual basis as well. We have publications that we maintain as well that we give to practitioners on an annual basis to show trends, and then have ongoing research that we do to try and develop innovative ways to bring potential legislation to you. And we currently have 5 bills right now that are in House Corrections for that particular purpose. The second program that I wanted to speak about was the 2003 Senate Bill 123 Substance Abuse Treatment Program. This is the program that we serve as the bill payment system or administrator when an individual is actually convicted of a drug possession, small sale, and they are actually potentially eligible for the judge to sentence them to the Senate Bill 123 program. This is a community corrections supervised program that sends them to a treatment provider that will provide substance abuse treatment services. We're kind of almost like a managed care organization in that we pay for anything from inpatient treatment all the way down to group therapy. And so that is up to 18 months of treatment that we actually pay for. We normal budget is in around the $10 million range. And so in my testimony, I've kind of indicated on page 2, and before I do that, I kind of wanted to the attachment that I that I present kind of gives you an idea of one of the first things that we see concerns with, and we hope that we can kind of pass that on to you as legislators. The COVID provided the prison population setting with something that it had not seen in many, many years, and that was a decrease in population. The problem that we have, of course, now is we are now bouncing back from that, and we are seeing a resurgence of the prison population. And so the projections that we show from this last summer indicate that we're back up to almost 2019 levels, and that we will be looking to capacity again. And those of you who have been here since pre-COVID understand that we not only are dealing with a capacity issue itself of a physical capacity, but also a staffing capacity that I'm sure that Secretary Zamuda will continue to talk with you about. So those are the party is over. For all intents and purposes, as far as being able to have a population that is under what we have for people staffing it. We are currently about mid 80% capacity, but that actually is working its way up. Staffing capacity has been at 99% for quite some time. So that is something that obviously the DOC has worked diligently for several years now on trying to recruit and retain folks. That will continue to need to be a factor because of, as I said, the estimate that we have is that we are back on track for prison population capacity in the especially in the male ranks. Little later as far as female is concerned, and many of you are aware that we only have one female prison here in Topeka. A couple of other things I wanted to touch on were I've tried to spend the last about a year and a half spending a lot of time with technology. And we've been fortunate enough, obviously, on the state level to have the revenues that have been able to support that. And as a result of that, we are moving into, I kid sometimes, into the 21st century because we have previously not done any type of electronic journal entry. And so we have started a project to be able to digitize and make electronic all of those sentencing documents that currently all of the stakeholders, attorneys, judges use. They're all in paper right now. They're all hard copies. The court system have been electronic filing for a number of years, 6 or 7 years. One of the only documents that is not is that sentencing journal entry that is at the back end and is it basically documents what happened on that sentencing date. So we have worked with a vendor for about a year or so now to develop a cloud-based application to be able to assist stakeholders in being able to fill out those journal entries. And there's actually even a DocuSign or a signature module as well. And we are in the third pilot study of that and are looking forward to going live with it. We also are looking towards trying to make the public-facing data that we currently have more accessible. And in doing so, we've also partnered with a vendor that is going to allow us to be able to visually better help by website to be able to provide the data, the good data that we really have right now. And so we're really excited about doing that. We currently have an annual report that we put out. It was a consensus that probably not too many people look at 146 pages of PDF. And so, some people, of course, they check out a few things, but they're not looking at everything. Using visualizations is going to take us to another level so that the consumer can actually consume what they want and not just what we're giving them in a PDF. So we're very excited about that. We're looking until the end of this fiscal year to actually complete that project. In addition to that, the prison population projection model, or the computer model that we're using, is 25 years old. Now, as you can see in this attachment that I've provided, it's still pretty good. Over a 10-year period, we're at 1.68% error rate. Usually 5% on either side is really good. I try and get our research folks down under 2%. And so this indicates that the model is working very well. However, it is a legacy system. And we are working with that same vendor to hopefully be able to recreate something similar to that could be supported. And so if we can do that, then we may be moving to that particular model. It's a similar simulation model, but we would like to have support for it because the current is still viable. Yet we'd like to have something that's supportable. Finally, in the last 5 years, the Senate Bill 123 program has been expanded 3 times. That has been, we've expanded from regular possession offenses to small sales because we knew that some of the small time dealers were actually supporting their habit and needed treatment. And so that was passed. Diversion was also an issue as to allow for treatment for those folks, paid treatment through the 123 program. That was passed by the legislature. And then just last year, our request to expand that to non-person felonies was also granted. We know that folks, to support their addictions, they commit forgeries, they commit thefts, they just don't possess drugs. And so this obviously went, and we believe it's going to at least probably double the number of participants in the program. So with that, the legislature appropriated $1.8 million to that. In terms of FY24, I think that we'll be okay. Implementation sometimes is slow with new laws. And so 25, I think, is going to be the bellwether as to whether or not we may have to come in and ask for more money, depending on the implementation. We don't control that. It depends on the offenders that are committing the crimes, and then the judges that are sentencing the crimes, and if they meet criteria based upon the statute. So we don't control those factors. We're simply administering that particular program. But we are very excited about the fact that it has expanded to the point now where we are able to provide the services. We're excited just because in the other instances where you have folks that don't qualify, that still need services, now they can actually get other community services that they wouldn't have otherwise received because the state wasn't paying for those things. So we're very excited about expanding that. We have increased, and that part of the enhancement request that the governor has included in her recommendation was a new 3-year agreement with the vendor. We've been very happy with them the last 5 years. In fact, they do block grant as well, Carillon, and they have bent over backwards to help us in the program. So very happy to be with you this afternoon and see all of you back in sunny Topeka, and be happy to and what I will say is the the budget request that we have out for 24 and 25, we believe is sufficient. We would ask you to adopt the recommendations. There's nothing, in all transparency, there's nothing in here that we see as problematic at all, and would ask you to adopt those recommendations.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the director? Representative Resman.
Thanks, Chair. Scott, 1.68, that's pretty impressive, low number. I was just wondering, what are some of the things that you consider when you're working these projections?
Sure, great question. The main things that we look at are admissions and length of stay. And so because we have the sentencing guidelines, the grid, because we have that, that allows us to get as close as we do with this model. We're able to actually take it, if we had indeterminate sentences like we used to back before 1993, this would be significantly more difficult. But because we can actually see who's landing in all of those boxes on the grid, that allows us to better be able to predict or estimate, and then the computer model does its thing as to where we believe. Now we have to make assumptions as well, and so we meet with DOC and other folks, judiciary as well, in a couple consensus meetings to talk about those assumptions as to, is there a different direction? Has DOC changed policies so that maybe there aren't going to be as many people released based upon a new policy they've developed, or maybe there's going to be more. So we not only look at what data that we have, we also make other assumptions along the way, put those things together, and then that assists us. But admissions and length of stay, you're looking at averages as far as jail credit, good time credit, as well as program credit. Those are all things that go into the model as well. And that, then we slice and dice all the way down to the severity level, and then the individual crime level. And so I'm glad I don't have to do it. That's why I have a research director.
So those numbers can change monthly because of good time, if it's good time's taken away or it's added. So that's, you're constantly changing those numbers.
We look at, since we get that data on an annual basis from DOC, we're only looking at it in the summer. Once the fiscal year is over, they cut the data, and then we have, by statute, we have 6 weeks to turn it around and make recommendations with the projections. So we're seeing that. Technically, yes, it probably is happening, but what we're seeing is that snapshot as of June 30. And then based upon that, then we can actually see averages, how many people are getting, were eligible for program credit that actually received it, those type of things. And so based upon that, then we can back out the time that they're actually spending, or that length of stay that I was talking about.
Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a kind of a rhetorical question. We've got a handout from Department of Corrections. We've also got yours, which is Sentencing Commission. Are you two one, or are you arm's length?
Another fantastic question, Representative Delperdang. We are a freestanding agency of 15 folks. That allows us to be objective. We're not beholden to KBI, DOC, Attorney General. As a freestanding, now we are not beholden, but we're accountable. I'm accountable to my commission, but we're accountable to bringing objective data to the legislature and all the rest of the stakeholders that we have. And so being separate is actually a good thing.
Okay. So question 2, what I was leading up to, and if it's one I need to ask Department of Corrections, that's fine if you don't want to jump into this. But the chair and I both are, obviously we're on this committee. We both also sit on the state building committee together. And during the State of the State speech, the governor brought up needing, it was either 30 or 300 million to build a new Hutchinson prison. That was news to me. Do you have any knowledge of it? Is it something we need to take back to Department of Corrections?
That'd certainly be a DOC question. We can tell you what our estimates as far as prison population is concerned, my guess would be that, well, it's not my guess, the Secretary Zamuda is going to be able to better inform you.
Okay, and that's what I kind of thought. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
All right, now we will move into the informational briefing for C-Post. And I think this is going to be online.
Yes, Chair Anderson, this is Doug Schrader, Director of C-Post. Committee members, thank you for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, good to have you, Director. We can hear you.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll jump right into a PowerPoint that I have prepared. You may have it in front of you, but it also may go up on your screen. First of all, I want to point your attention to our mission statement. I seem to always want to dumb down our mission statement to just we exist to increase the professionalism of Kansas law enforcement officers, and we do that by coming alongside them, helping with training aspects and various other things. We have several statutory responsibilities. We serve approximately 8,300 current Kansas law enforcement officers. Our central registry contains data on over 34,000 current and past law enforcement officers. So as far as basics, we are the regulatory agency for Kansas law enforcement officers. I think this is on slide number 4. Our authority is derived from the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Act, KSA 745601 and subsequent. We issue law enforcement certifications. We also maintain the central registry that include all of law enforcement officers' employment and in-service training history. We serve as a resource to prevent the wandering officer, and we investigate Training Act violations and take certification action as appropriate. And I'll expand on each of those. What we do not do, on the next slide, we do not exercise authority over any non-certified law enforcement officer, such as KDOC employees, most jail deputies, or volunteer reserve officers. We do not exercise authority over law enforcement agencies. We're simply the regulatory licensing agency for the officers. We do not exercise authority over the members of judicial system, such as complaints on prosecutors, judges, ineffective counsel, that sort of thing. I answer to a 12-member commission that is appointed by the governor. Amongst that, on the next slide, you'll see it includes the superintendent of the Kansas Highway Patrol, the director of the KBI, 3 county sheriffs, all of 3 different population counties, 3 police chiefs, 1 from the first class, 1 from the second class, and 1 from a third class city, 1 training officer that is a Kansas Peace Officers Association nominee, 1 officer that is a Fraternal Order of Police nominee, or maybe a nominee, 1 county or district attorney nominee, and then finally our chairperson is a member of the public at large and is currently, and for the last few years, has been Brandon Johnson of Wichita. We have a small staff. On the next page, you'll see all of us. We have 1 director, myself, legal counsel, 3 investigators, 1 central registry manager, 1 office support specialist, and 1 senior administrative assistant. We are not funded by the general fund, but rather through $5 from every municipal court docket fee is collected for our operations. And that is strictly municipal court and not district court docket funds. Furthermore, we track a few more things, training related. We track all 40 hours of minimum continued annual education for officers. On the next slide, just this morning, I ran some numbers, and with our approximately 8,300 officers, they accounted for over 800,000 hours of training this last fiscal year. That comes out to just below 100 hours of training per officer. So as you can see, the minimum number of annual training is 40 hours, but the average is more than double that. We also maintain record of firearms proficiency and whether or not the officer has completed bias-based policing as it is mandated annually. Next, the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Act violations and investigations. On the next slide, I'll address just a few of those. First of all, our commission may suspend, revoke, remand, deny, or censure or condition any law enforcement certification. They can do so with fail to maintain minimum requirements, such as an officer failing a fit for duty evaluation or a felony or domestic violence crime. Acts of good moral character under KAR 10624, such as submit false documents or fail to obtain certification, provide false information or fail to cooperate with Kansas Post investigations, fail to complete annual in-service training, engage in conduct that constitutes a felony, misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, or any one of the 58 misdemeanors as is dictated in regulation. The use of racial or other bias-based policing prohibited by KSA 224609. And you can show all of these on that slide, if you will. And then lastly, engage in unprofessional conduct as determined by regulation. One thing I do want to point out on this slide is number 5, engage in conduct. If you go around to all the different states, you'll find that no state post is similar. Many are different. Many can only take action, certification action, when there is an officer conviction. They have to be charged with a crime and convicted of it. In Kansas, we're a lot more active. We always have been. If the conduct alone can be proven, but there were no adjudication, then that is something that our commission can and does still take action on. The next slide is just a snapshot of what our investigations look like. First of all, we receive information from any one of a number of sources. We take phone call complaints. We have a form on our website. We watch the media for any officer's arrest. But most of our referrals, if you will, for investigation come from the agencies themselves. Within 30 days, they have to submit a form of an officer's hiring and also their termination. Why they were terminated, whether it was on for cause or a simple resignation to take a job or retirement. That is something that they have to report to us. If it looks like that could be a Training Act violation, we then start an investigation. Matter of fact, that's the exact question we ask ourselves, is if the allegation would constitute a Training Act violation. If it's true, then we assign it for investigation. The investigators work up the case, interview the officer and any other relevant people, and present it to the investigative committee made up of 3 individuals from our 12-member commission. They decide whether a summary order is issued, and if so, the officer has 30 days rather to contest that by requesting a hearing. Should a hearing be requested, that hearing will be in front of 3 different panel members made up of our 12-member commission. Furthermore, after that, if the officer is not satisfied with that outcome, they can appeal that outcome to district court. So that's just a snapshot, what it looks numbers-wise, and when I started talking about how active we are here in Kansas. The next slide will give you some of that data. Kansas we're down a little bit, but had about 8,600 officers between the years of 2012 and 2020, just on average. During that 8-year span, we took 371 certification actions. Compare us to a state like Minnesota, who has more active law enforcement officers. They took 1/10 of the actions and only 33 certification actions within that same time frame. Pennsylvania, another state to compare to, they have 3 times the number of active law enforcement officers as Kansas, yet they took 35 certification actions between 2014 and 2018. During that same time, Kansas took 307 actions. Again, I don't want to paint a picture as we move to the next slide that Kansas law enforcement agencies are hiring less desirable people, but rather once you get into our regulations and the Training Act, you will find in comparison to other posts in other states that we are very active in protecting and being the gatekeepers of Kansas law enforcement professionalism. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of statistics. I do want to point out just 2 things that I consider fiscal year 23 wins here. First of all, it's about the 5th line down, agency information requests received. In FY22, there's 461. FY23 increased by almost 100. What that means is agencies that are hiring officers that are current somewhere else, kind of lateral entry, if you will, they're doing their homework. They're getting their forms, their education, their records, employment data from us. And we've been encouraging that so that agencies can make the best hiring decisions that they can. Furthermore, down under the investigations area, the number of delinquent officers for training hours, such as the number of officers that did not get their training hours in during any given year. In 2022 was 68 officers, and we reduced that by about 1/3, and there were only 48 officers this last year. All right, I want to spend a little bit of time on this next and almost last slide. I'll spend more time on this when I'm with you in person here. I believe it's Thursday of this week during budget hearing. However, I have charted some of our revenue and our expenditures. Our revenue actually was at its height in 2017.
Director, you might be muted.
With a slight exception in 2023, where it barely went back up, but it is on the downward fall. 2024, I understand the fiscal year is not over yet. I've taken the first 6 months and doubled it to estimate that we will be receiving 632, almost 633,000. Coincidentally, our budget is, of course, not set yet, but it is pitched to be in the $975,000 range. So as you can see, not only has revenue decreased quite a bit, almost every year, but our buying dollar from now compared to 2017 has not been as good as well. So between the two of them, I do firmly feel, and I'll explain this a little bit more on Thursday, that next legislative session, we're going to have to do something about that. Currently, I believe we have reserves and adequate income to go through our 24 and the 25 budget that we'll talk more about later this week, but can't guarantee anything beyond that, and we'll definitely need to address it. On the last page of my slides, I just want to point out our website. I invite you to go check it out. We try to be very transparent on our website. In other words, we list all of our agency actions, officer actions rather. We list them by name and by date, so you can look at them by year or by name. We list our integrity bulletins. We also send out a monthly spotlight that anybody can subscribe to. I know we have a number of legislators that subscribe to our monthly, basically, newsletter where we take one law enforcement topic and dissect it for our stakeholders. So please check that out. With that, I will certainly stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Going back to the actions taken, the slide where you compared Kansas with 8,600 law enforcement officers and took 371 actions to Pennsylvania with over 27,000 and only took 35 actions. And I know you touched on the agency information requests, and I see the complaints there. So, do you think Pennsylvania? I know you're not an expert in Pennsylvania, but are they just not taking up the complaints, or I suppose what's the difference between other states and us?
Yeah, so one of the major differences is a lot of other states, probably majority of other states, can only take action if there's a criminal conviction. And that is probably the lion's share of their complaints are criminal conduct. Whereas here in Kansas, we can take action off conduct alone. Matter of fact, a professor from St. Louis recently passed in an article called Kansas the Gold Standard, because we do have a strong Kansas Law Enforcement Training Act, and we do have adequate regulations. Now, in that same vein, we are seeking more regulations here soon, because we don't want to have good be the enemy of great. We want to continue to seek greatness and serve our stakeholders.
Very good. Any questions from the committee? All right. I think that's all. Well, thank you very much, Director, and we will see you in person Thursday.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, committee. That is all for today. We'll have a couple informational briefings Wednesday, and Shirley, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let you know, Representative Delperdang mentioned the Department of Corrections annual report that you have in front of you. I provided that to the committee because you are hearing from Department of Corrections tomorrow. So if you wanted to look at their annual report and if you had any questions, you have it.
Very good. Thank you. And lastly, we did get a new committee assistant this year, Kyler Sweely. So not only he'll help conferees, but also committee members as well. We will see you guys Wednesday.